Mic check, mic check. Mic check.
I can't hear you.
You can't?
You hear? I don't hear.
Mic check, mic check. Hello, hello.
I can hear
Testing. I hear myself.
I see your lips moving, but
Mic check, mic check.
I can actually hear.
no, I'm joking. I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. All right. What are we talking about today? Preference versus prejudice.
Okay.
Interesting.
Are you going to elaborate?
When we do the show.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's an easy conversation, but they're
Definitely
easy
not
words
easy.
for us. They're easy.
Straight away, I feel a bit tense when
Yeah,
you hear
I
that
know,
word
it's just-
preference. I mean, nowadays, if you say what you prefer,
Hey. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. All right.
good.
Let's do it. Yeah.
go on, yeah.
Y'all look worried.
Just a
Y'all look
little.
worried.
A little sweat. I'm sweating a little bit.
Yo, check it. It's Victor O, Sarah G, I'm Omega, and this is Diverse Clarity. This is where we have those thought-provoking conversations about things that matter and some that don't. It's a beautiful day.
It
The
is.
birds are chirping. And how are y'all doing?
I'm all good, thanks. Yourselves?
Yeah, sure.
I'm good too. I'm just a little tired, but I'm good.
Tired or you're a little bit tense? Because I just told you about what we're going to talk
I think
about
a bit
today.
of both now. There's like,
Because both of y'all like to look at before y'all talking, like, yes, back in university, it was this way. And, when I walked in the room, the people saw me and they felt like this because I looked like this. And you're like, yes, you'd be great and that and this and that. And then now I'm like, yeah, y'all, so this is what we're going to talk about. And y'all are like,
yeah, definitely a little tense. I
Really?
won't lie. Yeah.
Yeah.
why?
Today's atmosphere, man. You just don't voice out your actual opinion to a degree.
Well, let's get to it then before what are y'all gonna talk about? So what I want to talk about today is preference versus prejudice, right? So first, just like Sarah said, like I wanna make sure we define what the difference is between the two. So what do you two think it is in your mind? Like if you have a preference for something, what does that usually stand out as? What does that mean? That way we all on the same terms here when we speaking about this. Preference. I prefer this. What is that?
Ooh. I think preference would be, for me, something that would be my default. Like it's something that I would tend to go after or it's hard. I'm trying to pick the right words.
So already, we haven't even started yet.
I think she was thinking about a man for a second. Something that I would go after. Wait. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say it like that. I don't want to say it that way.
No, I was just like, I don't know. For me, that's actually a really tough question. I think preference for me is something that would just be my default, something that I like, I would want. And yeah, I don't know. What would you say?
I'd probably say I'd define preference as bias. So if I had two items, for instance, I'd have a bias towards one item compared to the other one for various reasons. It might be the look, it might be the color, it might be the size, but it's a bias for one item over the other item. So that's how I'd simply just define it.
It's funny when you say that. Like I understand where you're coming from, what you mean, but I think some people might even hear that, and depending on the situation, they might say you're being prejudiced.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, I was like,
I think you know what I mean?
fine line.
So that's why I want to have this conversation, because like I've heard that many times, like in my life, not like towards me per se, but like somebody say something, they're like, ooh, you prejudiced. Or better yet, let me just digress for a second. Some people get prejudice and racist confused. And they'll hear somebody say something, be like, ooh, don't be racist. And it's like, well, he really wasn't being racist. He was just being prejudiced about how he feels about something, which is okay, right? It's being prejudiced is okay. It's the racism part that we don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a whole, I guess the show could have been that. It could have been prejudice versus racism, right?
It really could have.
So, but preference and prejudice. So like, I guess for me, I think about preference. I don't even, and I did my best to like not try to like look up anything. So I was like trying to think like, man, how would we do this? But yes, like you said at the beginning, defining it is probably best. And so like, I guess for me, when it's a preference, I think of it like it's more natural, it's more human nature, right? Like it's just what I prefer. Like it's just it. I don't know why, maybe in some instances, but it's just a natural thing. Whereas when it's prejudice, it's more discriminatory. It could be hurtful. And I do see where there is a line in between because, for example, and this might even sound controversial, but I mean, it is what it is. I noticed when I was in the military, I would see like a lot of older white men dating young Asian women, right? Maybe like from the Philippines or Thailand or whatever. And so some people would look at that like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and you get what I mean, right? But that may just be their preference for whatever the reason is. So I don't know, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. But
the first thing when you said preference, and even when I was trying to explain it from my point of view, the first thing that came up was conditioning, because when you said something about it being what comes natural, I'm like, how much of your preference is natural, your nature, or from your preference now because of what you've observed, what you've experienced? So that's where my mind kind of goes. I'm like, oh, that's actually really tough, because it could be your natural preference now, but is it really your innate natural? Is it really yours, or is it something you've picked up over time?
How do you guys feel about your natural preference or your preferences that you may have? Basically, and it kind of goes off of what you said in the beginning, being discredited by society. Because if I step in the room and I say, I prefer white women, no, it's just an example. If I step in the room and say, I prefer white women, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Whatever you prefer is for you. But if I stepped in the room and I said that, right, somebody could say he's being racist against black people, or he's being racist against, or discriminatory or prejudiced against people of color, right? And the reason I said all of those because people sometimes conflate the meaning of those words, right? So not that we're doing that here, right?
Such a fine line.
It is. So somebody, if I stepped in as a black man and I say, all right, yeah, nobody here that I'm really feeling, you know what I mean? Like whatever, ain't no white girls here. I'm like, yo, dang, why are you being racist against your own people? Why you discriminate? Why you discriminating against your own people? Why you being prejudiced against your own people? It's on you how you feel about that. But if it truly is that person's preference, are they being racist? Are they being discriminatory? And then even if it is a form of discrimination or form of prejudice, is it wrong that a black person prefers white women, or that a Latino prefers white men, or you know what I mean? Like, is that wrong? Like, so how does it look when our natural preferences are now discredited by society? Like, how do y'all take that on?
Heavy. Okay. In that case, where that example you gave about like maybe even a black man saying he prefers white women, for example. In that case, I kind of feel like you. I'm like, let's not step on anyone's toes. Like, but in that case, you know, I've come to the realization that everybody is entitled to their own opinion, and I can't discount how you feel because I've never been in your shoes. But my next line of questioning in my own head would be like, okay, what is it about white women that makes them your preference? And like, have you just not experienced that or seen that within another racial group? Or like, so my question isn't to like discount how you feel your preference, but I'm just curious as to why that specific group might be your preference. Because there probably is some underlying belief system or thought that makes that type of group or that person. Because it's not that specific Emily that is white that you like, but if you say you like,
why you hating on Emily?
I'm just choosing a name.
I mean,
you know, like.
I'm just saying, why would you assume? Are you being prejudiced?
Yeah,
like, are you saying that Emily's a white person's name?
Well, Sarah, people think Sarah's a white person's name. I'm definitely not. I'm not white.
I don't know what you identify as. I'm not going to come in. I don't know.
I don't know. But so, anyways, to tie it all together, I talk with my hands, but to wrap it all up.
Oh, she's feeling there for Jessica.
Yeah, I
know.
Bluetooth. Grabbing words. Basically, I would just want to know, like, what's behind that preference.
You mentioned what word did you use? You said some type of belief. No, belief. You said, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so can I ask a question to respond to, like, instead of giving you an answer? This just came to me as you were talking. I'm like, well, does it depend on who it is that's talking? And what I mean by that is, if it's a white guy that prefers black women, right? People have ideas about that. Mm-hmm. If it's a black person that prefers white, or a black man that prefers white women, people have a response about that, right? Old white man that wants a young Asian woman, people got responses for that.
Yeah.
But what do we say when a young Chinese man wants to stick with a young Chinese woman, or a young Indian man wants to stick with an old Indian woman? And the reason I say it is because, like, from our side of the world, because we're intertwined with that.
Yeah.
We are heavily, on our side, we're heavily intertwined with black, white, Latino, various parts of Asia, right? Mm-hmm. This is normal for us.
Yeah.
But when you pick parts of Asia, say, for example, India, like, that may not be a part of your diaspora. That may not be a part of, like, where you come from and what you see on a regular basis. But when you venture outside, it's like, people will say this, and it may sound politically incorrect, but they stick to their own, right? So you see an Indian person, and they're usually with someone from their culture. Yeah. So maybe it's not a belief thing. Maybe it's just culture. Actually, we talked about culture in the previous episode, but maybe it's a culture thing, or is it even looked at differently because it may be something along those lines? Because nobody bats an eye when you see two Indian people together. And if that's his preference, that's his preference.
But then under that preference, there's still probably a belief or, like, a thought that being with someone from his own culture would make things easier, or maybe that's just who they've seen and they've experienced, so that's, like, comfortable, so it's their preference, you know?
Right. So does it make it, so the question is, does it make it wrong? Because maybe that's all they know.
Yeah.
Right? No, I'm asking, like, but does it make it wrong? And if we say yes or no, do we look at it as who we are, or do we look at it on the scale that it exists on? Because on a global scale, it's just looked at as, this is their culture, this is their people, and this is them being with the people that they know and love, right? They may not know anything else, right? So I mean, I remember the first time I ever met a person from India, I was in elementary school, and it's weird, I still remember her name. It was Deepthi Jairaj, and I just thought she was, like, a really pretty black lady, a black girl, you know what I mean? Like, or whatever. I mean, and then I realized, like, because I went to school on a military base in my elementary years, right? So I'm like, I didn't know. Like, I had never seen someone that looked like you, right? So it was just, so maybe that's all they know. So maybe we could look at it as in they're being prejudiced, but they're looking at it like, yo, that's morning and night. Like, what are you talking about? That's what we do. So does it matter who it is that's portraying whatever this prejudice or preference may be versus actually what it is that's happening? Does that matter?
That's an interesting one.
It is.
I'm glad it is. Let's talk about it. That's why we're here.
I don't reckon there's going to be a right or wrong answer for this.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, again, it's all they know, like you already mentioned. It's weird, man. It's actually so weird.
I think it, like, without sounding being that person.
Yeah.
I do think it would, my line of questioning would change based on who's saying it. Like the way I would process it would change based on who's saying it. So if it was like, you're right, I don't think it's wrong to have a prejudice or like to have a preference.
Mm-hmm.
But if I, for example, as a Black woman said, oh, my preference is white men, versus me as a Black woman saying, oh, my preference is Black men, the thought process of what I would think about would be different, even though we're saying the same thing. But like, because I'm saying it about a different group of people, I think it changes how I would respond or think about what the statement that's being said.
Do you think that the people who would feel that way are feeling that way because they've made a prejudice about your culture? Because you could be a Black woman that grew up around a lot of white people.
True.
I am.
Right?
Context.
Yeah.
Right? So a person looking at you will be like, oh no, she's Black. But they don't know where you come from.
Mm.
And all they see is you as an adult in the real world with who you decided to love.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like I said, it's one of those where, and what about the verbiage that could be used, right? So if you have, let's just say an Indian guy who says, he's your friend, and you try to introduce him to somebody, and let's say it's a Latina. Oh, no. I'll stick with my people. Well, that type of verbiage could be looked at like racist, discriminatory, prejudice, all of these things. But in his mind, he's like, no, like that's not what we do. I'm over here.
Mm-hmm.
And there very well is nothing wrong with that, but it's also delivery of the package, right? How is he giving this out to you? Because there is a difference between somebody existing in a relationship versus how they find their way to that relationship and the words and actions that they put out there in between it all. So does that even matter?
Yes.
It does?
Yes.
So we give a pass to people who may come from a culture who this is what they're used to versus the one that we're familiar with?
I'm saying yes to the verbiage
Okay.
of how it's said.
Right.
Like if I was like, nah, I don't do that. Versus like, actually, no, I value like sharing the same culture. So this is my preference. That like, it's different from, it's just the way it's said is different. And even though it's saying the same thing, the delivery is different. So I think I would respond differently.
Okay. So what if I said like, oh no, we don't do that where I'm from. Or we don't date white people where I'm from.
Which I've heard a lot.
That might be true.
Yeah.
That just might be true. Yeah. He may not mean, or she may not mean any malice by it. Mm-hmm. She's like, no, or my father would not have that.
Mm-hmm. Looking at it from a different scope, though, I feel like this topic it looks the way it looks, and it's obviously a very tight topic. I think it affects the white and the Black community more than it affects the Asian community, in my opinion. Because I feel like if an Asian came out to say, I only date my people, it would look different to if, let's say, a Black man comes out and says to a white, take for instance, he's sat in a white space where he's surrounded by white people, and he says, I'm only allowed to date my race. I feel like it would be looked at differently compared to when an Asian man does that, because I feel like a white man would look at an Asian man and say, okay, yeah, it's the culture. So they're allowed to do such. But if a Black man said it, it would be taken slightly differently to how you'd look at an Asian man saying the same thing. So I feel like that conversation is very, very tight when it comes to the white and the Black community. Because again, if a Black man comes out to say, I'm dating, or I prefer a white woman in a Black space, we're looking at him like, what are you doing? And if a white woman says that in a white space that she prefers Black men as well, she would be looked at in a different light. But then again, it's a fine line. And I feel like, again, Black and white community in this case are in the limelight, and it affects those two communities more than it affects the Asians from what I've observed over a period. And I mean, you can correct me if you feel otherwise too.
No, I agree. Is there any reason why our prejudice should be validated? Like even if it's what was the word we were using before? Gosh,
Belief,
I can't remember.
value.
Conditional.
No, it wasn't in this episode. It was a previous one. What is the word I'm looking for?
I wish I could pull it out for you.
When we had the episode we didn't air. What was the word? It was looked at to when somebody is looking for help, and it's irrational. Right? So even I knew she was gonna laugh.
Sorry.
Yeah, right. Just one.
Yeah, maybe I should. Yeah.
So even if it may seem irrational, right? Like, yeah, I don't know. It is a difficult thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead.
But what I was gonna say was like, away from dating, even if we're looking at like the culture of people. Okay, I know this would be, but whatever. It's reality. I'll say it in this way. There were events that took place in the U.S., 9/11 specifically, and a large part of the world was very uneducated about specific religions and regions, and specifically speaking about Islamic religion, right? Muslims. And so when 9/11 happened, you had a massive amount of people who were extremely prejudiced against people that they knew nothing about. They watched the news. They heard what the reporters were saying.
Mm-hmm.
They heard what do you call them on it? Pundits. What's it called? Pundits on the news, right?
Yeah.
So you heard what they were saying on the news. Their opinion-based shows, all of these things that were put out about the Muslim faith, the Islamic culture, like all of these things, and there was this massive prejudice piece, but it was accepted. It was accepted because of the unknown and what they thought was the known, and what then became the norm. So even if for a short period of time, the question I was asking was, is prejudice sometimes accepted and then normalized, actually, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and is that okay? Because I'll go away from religion with it. If you go to the US and you look at mass shootings, I think we talked about this before.
Yeah.
The majority of mass shootings are happening, or the majority of mass shootings are, I don't say performed, carried out by white people. Now, somebody who's never been to America, has only seen a few of our movies on online, right? Streamed them, whatever. They're getting ready to take their first trip to the USA. Actually, rephrase that. They're getting ready to move to the USA. They got a job and they have 2 children and they have to enroll their children in the school. But lately, or in the past 2 years, 3 years, let's just say, they've been focusing on the news and all they're seeing is mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Is it rational, irrational for that person, that family to have a fear about enrolling their children into American schools? So again, I ask, is being prejudiced okay, even if it leans towards the discriminatory side and see? Okay, there we go. See? So there we go. Boom. I'm gonna shut up. I'm listening.
Now you've actually given it more context. Then I mean, yeah, it is rational sometimes to be that way, because then, like from the example that you've just given, it would make sense for someone to be hesitant to put their child, because I wouldn't want to do that, hearing the news and seeing what I've seen. But again, it's
I love this topic. Yo, I woke up with this on my mind. I'm
it
telling
actually
you.
depends on context.
Yeah.
But then again, it is a catch-22 because
I
it's
don't think
still
it's
not right.
right. You said, is it okay?
Mhm.
I don't think it's necessarily okay, but I think it's something that's just going to happen. I think it's rational. Like
What is something that's going to happen? The shootings, you mean?
no, I
Oh,
think
the way that people.
I think the perception or gathering, like to literally prejudge a group of people, I think that is something that's going to happen if that's all you're viewing, right? I think that will happen, but I don't necessarily think it's right. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I think it happens.
I mean, morally, it's not right. I guess
Yeah.
like for like society,
Yes.
it's not right.
Yes,
but practically,
it's going to happen for sure.
But I mean, practically, I think it's right.
Okay.
Like I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I do agree. But I also feel like if I had to enroll my child in school, and I'm American, like if I had to, I'm paying attention to the gun laws in that state, right? What's it been like in the past? I'm paying attention to political issues that are going on. Who's on the board of education? You know, like these are things that I would have never thought about 15 years ago. But as I've grown and I've matured, I've started to understand how the world works and how things are affected. Who's pulling strings, if you want to call it that, the proverbial strings. Like, and so that's why. So I'm like I said, I'm focused on the school board. I'm looking at who's running for election. I'm looking at the what do we call it in the U.S. The props, say like Prop 37, if that's about gun laws, whatever it is. Like I'm paying attention to all of that before I enroll my kids in school because I want to have an idea in its totality about what kind of situation that may be or what could be brewing underneath. You know, so when I say practical, that's what I mean. Like practically, yeah, I think it's okay because I'm worried about the safety. Right. I spent my my youth years defending a country that looks at me like I'm not worthwhile, at various places that I go. So you mean to tell me I'm going to walk around the streets and just cover my eyes because I might hurt somebody's damn feelings? Nah, I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about your feelings. We got stupid people out here doing stuff and you ain't doing nothing about it. Yeah. So I am going to be prejudiced. I am going to prejudge your ass and make sure that I'm putting myself and my family in the safest situation possible. So yes, I think practically I'm going to prejudge you depending on the situation, right? So, but that's why I agree, but there's got to be a line drawn, I think.
Yeah. So. I think, well, it's hard because yes, you want to protect your family, you're going to prejudge, but we could say the same thing. Like now, say like a white family walking by, all three of us,
I was about to say that,
just prejudging us.
Oh, more than two is a gang, so you can't do that.
You can't. But yeah, I mean, like it works both ways because there's people who will be rational with that prejudice,
right?
And who will do it from a place of safety and a place of awareness of like, okay, I just want to be prepared. And there's people who will be out there just prejudging everybody, and taking it to the extreme. And that's where you have these extremist groups because they have these prejudice against other people. And, so I understand where you're coming from. And I think you're right. But I also think there's also a shadow side, like a flip coin to that too, where people will take that prejudice and like,
for the record, but for the record, I'm not saying that all prejudices are created equal.
Yeah.
Like
you're not.
But no, because it sounded like it was saying like, okay, yeah, I'm saying I would be prejudiced about this particular thing.
Yeah.
And then you're saying like, well, if we allow prejudices, then these are the other things that can happen, which you are correct. But it's like, yeah, I'm not thinking like that.
Yeah, I know.
So if it's, I mean, I've been in a situation where there's been a clutch purse a couple times actually. Yeah. A clutch purse. Matter of fact, funny story. Not funny story, but I was in Baltimore. This was long time. And I got in the elevator for the hotel that I was in, right? Actually, I was headed to, I think, Kuwait or something like that. But I was in the hotel and going up to my room, I think it was, and the lady gets on. The lady got out of the elevator when I was coming in, and she got on the wrong floor, right? So she got back in real quick. Older lady, right? And so she gets in and, it's the look, it's the this, it's the that. She's whatever. And it's just the two of us, right? And we got to go kind of high up. And so we're there and she says, she asked me to press the button for her because she was holding her things kind of close. She was like 12 or, however it was, right? So she goes out and she drops money, right? Like maybe $40 or something like that. So she drops money. I stop the elevator, help her with her stuff, hand her back her money. And you could see the look on her face that was just like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And I'm just thinking to myself, in 48 hours, I'm leaving to go and fight for the country, and you sitting here looking at me like this. You know what I'm saying? I don't so much have a speeding ticket. Like, please. You know what I mean? So I would never say that it's okay to, look at people and just assume. And I think the example that I'm giving, it wasn't so much towards a person, it was towards a society and towards a practice. Because the society has a lot of murders happening via mass shooting. It's the society. I'm being prejudiced against that situation that I may be putting my family in. Yeah. So I want to do my research. I did research before I moved to this country.
I was just going to say, this country, like,
right.
Even before I came here, everyone's like, oh my God, you're going to the Middle East. Like, there's going to be bombs. Like, there's so much happening. Like, oh my God. And I visited and I was like, y'all have no idea. Like, this place is so safe. I can walk around at 3 a.m. like as a young woman and not even fear. Like, so yeah, it's definitely what you see in the media. And this is where that other conversation we had earlier about violence and perception is so important, because like what you continually feed your mind and you see in the media shapes this preference and prejudice. So I mean, if all you're seeing is negative portrayals of these communities, groups, then of course you're going to think, oh yeah, this person's crazy.
Agreed.
This person's going to attack me.
But I'm not listening to what all those people say back home anyway, because they don't even know the difference between Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and the UAE. You know what I mean? Like, I got people, they're like, oh yeah, you over there, and I'm gonna get a visa so I can go to Dubai. Dubai's not gonna give you a visa. You know what I'm saying? Where do you stay at? I've been in both, right? But where do you? Oh, I'm in Abu Dhabi now. Oh yeah, you got. Do you get to go to Dubai? It's 40 minutes up the road. Like, what? What, really? Y'all, it's that close? You do realize that Abu Dhabi's the capital. Abu Dhabi's the capital of Dubai. Abu Dhabi's the capital of the UAE. The UAE, what? United Arab Emirates. You know, Dubai is just a city in the UAE. For real? When they had Fast and Furious, that was in Abu Dhabi. What? Like, oh my God. Like, so those people, I'm not listening to at all.
It boils down to education, though, because in the end, these two subjects depends on how educated you are on whatever you're trying to prefer or have any sort of prejudice on, because some people actually pursue these preferences and prejudices uneducated. So they don't even know, okay, it's like you give birth to a child and you tell the child that you only marry from your culture, you only marry from your state or whatever. And that child grows up to actually fulfill those prophecies per se. But where a child is educated and they've grown up in, take for instance, a mixed society, they are able to make their own decisions based off their own observations. But not everyone has the privilege to actually grow up and have their own opinions, because, again, in some societies, you grow up in that same vicinity. That bubble, so that's all you know. So you're never going to be able to break out of that cycle.
Is ignorance an excuse for prejudice?
It could be.
Is that an allowance?
I wouldn't call it an allowance, but I mean, it is an excuse. For real.
I mean, because if we look at it on a global scale, right? If you took somebody from, I don't know, let's say they grew up, what is it, Mormon? Is that the one? It's Mormon, and then there's I don't want to get it wrong. What is it? Okay, so Mormons. What is the one where they don't have? Hang on. It's the one where they don't use electricity. They don't have it's not. It's Amish, right? So Amish, right? So like, if I'm not mistaken, like in the Amish culture, once they hit a certain 18, age, I think 16, 18, something like that.
Probably because 18, because they have to go into the real world.
I think. Okay. All right. So what we do know that they do hit a certain age, right? So. Yeah, so let's say they hit their age and they go out and they decide that they're going to stay, because I think that's what they do. They make a decision before, like, they go out. They have a certain whatever period of time. They go out. They make a decision if they're going to go back to the what do you call it? The Amish culture, the Amish village, right? So, or if they're going to stay out. So those individuals, or that individual, goes out and he or she is making choices, right? Having conversations based on what they know. And that's why I ask, is it, and it's funny because this was going to be another topic, but is it an excuse or is it a reason? See what I'm saying? Because the rest of the world doesn't care, right? If they don't watch TV or anything like that, right? But let's just say they heard a couple of Tupac songs when they got out of the airport, right? They might hear some words that they probably shouldn't be saying, but they don't know any better, right? Ignorance. So now they're around the wrong people saying the right words at the wrong time, and they're put in a situation. Are ignorant people going to look at what this person just did, which is ignorant, and then come after them? Or they're going to be like, oh, that's where you're from? Okay, you get a pass. See, I don't think the real world cares about other people and where you come from. Yeah. It's about what you put out there and then where they come from. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, because I wouldn't just walk around the office full of black people as a white person using the N-word. If I'm ignorant, I might. But the wrong person hearing him or her do that ain't going to care about it.
Yeah.
They going to show them what's up. So, again, does ignorance allow for is that an allowance? Is it for an excuse or a reason?
I think
y'all doing a lot of woofs today.
The Amish culture, like you've just explained it, it's a tricky one in the sense that they get to 16 or 18 and they're allowed to explore and do whatever. But I feel like education, this type of education should start from a young age. So if you're conditioned to know a certain thing up to the age of 16 or 18, there's a high chance that you might not be able to change your ways.
Bingo.
Because again, it's easier to learn a new language at a younger age than it is for you to learn it.
That is true.
So again, it boils down to education. So if you don't learn these things growing up, racism doesn't start from age 18 or whatever. You learn that from a very, very young age. And it's conditioned into you.
And then you start seeing,
and then you're like, yeah, I've been told this, so I've seen this, so now I have this opinion, and my opinion, whatever I feel, has been basically fulfilled, and there's nothing you can tell me to change my mind. I'm growing with that until I pass away. So again, it boils down to education, and from a very young age. At 18 and 16, there's hardly anything you can tell me it wouldn't be easy for you to convince me otherwise, because I've learned these patterns for 16 to 18 years. So again,
can we ever fully eradicate our thoughts of prejudices and biases along those lines? I mean, because some prejudices are good. You know, if I see your grade for your restaurant is like a D minus.
They're all wrong. Every last one of them.
That's true.
Like, I'm probably, you know what I mean? I'm probably not eating there, like inside the restaurant. So like that's the flip I want to give you, right? Like, even though somebody comes from a certain culture, possibly being diverse, right? So like, even though somebody comes from a certain culture or a certain belief, they may be labeled that. Oh, you Amish? Oh, we know how they are. It's the same. Yeah. They're doing the same thing. Whereas if I use the restaurant, analogy, it's like, well, they might have a D minus inside, but it was a startup. They ran out of money. Content. They had to be inspected. The inspection came. They had money that was coming. It was just delayed. The money is in. They're making all these changes. Things are really, really good and back. They just haven't had that next inspection so they can get their A or their A plus or whatever, right? So like you said earlier, context is everything, right? That D minus could have been before they even opened the doors, part of their pre-inspection, which I do know about, but like before they even opened their doors to start serving people, right? Or low grade. I don't even think they could have been serving at a D minus. I don't think, but whatever. But you get what I'm saying, right? Yeah. So like, do we give people, like the individuals themselves, the same type of allowance or leeway that we might give a restaurant or a venue or a car dealership? I don't know, whatever. Like, do we do that with ourselves?
I don't think we do off the bat, but for me personally, I feel like lately I have tried to, because I recognize how I might be perceived, and I would want people to give me the chance for them to get to know me before they make that prejudice. So I try and offer that same that
Courtesy,
same courtesy.
yeah.
Thank you for the word. I don't think we can fully eradicate. You were saying, do you think we can fully eradicate those beliefs or those prejudice? Is that how you would word it? I feel like we can, but it's a long, hard journey. Like, just like you said, conditioned over time. But then that's when accountability comes into play, and you have to start asking yourselves, like, where did this thought come from? Is it the only way of being? There's so many questions that you have to continuously ask yourself. And if you're not willing to do that work, to like question things, because especially if you're coming from like an Amish community, that's scary. If your loved ones and everything you've learned and been taught has told you it's one way, and now you're seeing other ways, but you've been told that that's all like blasphemy and like you're gonna burn in hell. Like, do you really? No, I'm just saying.
Oh,
let me say it's an example.
I'm not taking a field trip to Amish.
No. I'm just saying. No. But like, yeah. So if that's kind of the premise that you've started with, most people won't want to question those things or ask those questions because it's scary, and most people prefer that comfort of knowing what you know versus exploring what could be out there. That's my opinion.
That's true.
I agree. Yeah.
I don't know.
You think we're gonna be better off, or we just need to like die off and start over again? Like take everybody with all our negative thoughts and biases and prejudices and racist tendencies and everything. Just put us on a little island somewhere until we die, and then like teach everybody better. Like leave a group behind to teach them. Like is that what it's gonna have to take?
I don't reckon that would work either, because people would grow up to ask questions. Why am I different from this person? And I reckon with human nature, you would naturally gravitate towards your type and your kind.
Is it human nature? That's actually a topic that I have in the pocket. Is it human nature, or is it conditioning over time? Because a lot of things are passed through us. Yeah. Right? Not just culture. A lot of things are passed through our DNA. And people have been racist and prejudiced and discriminatory for a very, 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 very long time. Were we this way in the beginning? Like, were we this way? Like, against humanity? Yeah.
So, again, certain behaviors, for instance, I'll give you an example. So if I was walking past a black man in London, there's a high chance that he's going to nod his head, and I probably will as well.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. So y'all nod your head? Because we do what's up. Like, we don't do this. I don't. Yeah, no. I didn't realize that look like Tokyo. Oh, no. That's old black man from the South right there. What's up, cat? What's going on now? What's up now? Like, that's what that is. Right
so it's like that head raise, like, yeah. So when we taught that, I mean, that for me is basically, I don't know where that came from, but it's basically saying, hey, brother, without having to say
people are cool. Just because black people are cool. Yeah. We just do stuff.
But then again, with the white people, you get the I'm not racist white smile, like the split second. That's basically saying I'm not racist, I've got black friends. Usually.
I hate that, yo. I hate that.
You get that as well.
I've got black friends.
So again, where they taught that, and where we taught to actually give them head raises when we see black people, and if that wasn't taught, then I'd class it as human nature, and it again is recognizing your own. So I feel like there's always going to be that gravitation towards your own. So again, in scientific terms, I mean, they say opposite poles attract, and unlike poles attract, and like poles repel. Yeah. So it's basically, if I see someone that looks like me, first of all, it's a thing of, and I mean, if there was a mixed society, I want to explore to see what the others are like, but at the same time, I would question, why is that person like me? And what do we have in? Are we totally the same, or do we have similarities and different traits as well?
But that's the thought of how we think now. That's what I'm saying. Like, I really, really went like deep thought, like to myself. That's how we think now, because that's how we think. But was humanity always like this, or did we just roam and walk around gardens with snakes and apples and just like just live life but naked. You know what I mean? Like, was it one way? Like, and then was there something that happened over time where it changed? I don't know. Like, I guess the question would be like more or less, where did our egos come from? And like, did they always exist? Because that's really what it is. Like, who's this person with bigger muscles than me?
Yeah.
I feel like they must have.
You think
to
so?
a certain extent.
That's it. I don't want to go too far, but it's a fun. I mean,
even if you look at me, you look at you, like we would all have different talents and different skills based on our body type, based on our speed, our agility, our mental capabilities. But what's interesting would be to think about who classified what abilities to be like the hierarchy or like the higher ranking.
Well, then it had to start somewhere.
It had to start
right?
somewhere. So I don't know. Like, I don't know. That's a very
human nature is
Yeah.
inquisitive and is enthusiastic as well. So like these scientists started from asking a question and saying, do I have a solution to it? And how can I go about finding a solution to it?
But the thing is that, like I said, these things pass through people, and even people don't understand why. I give you a prime example of what I'm talking about. My first company that I worked with in the UAE, there was a gentleman that worked on the fire truck vehicles maintenance, right? He's from India. And we were pretty cool. And I decided to ask him one day, and I was like, listen, no offense. Like, I'm just curious. Why is it when Indian people speak, they do this little head nod? And it was so funny, right? He was like, I'll tell you something. I don't know. He's like, I don't know. We just do it.
Yeah.
We just do it, right? And so that's what those kind of things make me think about. I'm like, India is heavily populated.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like it's just like a few people there. Yeah. This isn't just Goa. This is India. Right? Yeah. And it's just like, and they don't know. And he's not a young guy. You know what I mean? He's like, yeah. He's like, I'll be honest with you, we don't know either. It's just like, wait, what? Like, and it just baffled me. But we all know that things can be passed through DNA and learned behavior and things like this. So I'm thinking mentality could be something that is like that. I mean, it comes with intellect too, right? Like the moment you have a child and your child is extremely intellectual, right? He gets it from his father. He gets it from his mama. Like we already have this assumption. Like, but where did it really come from? Where did you get it from? Like, was that also passed down? And so, like, the way of thinking, if intellect can be passed down, I mean, you're the scientist here. If intellect can be passed down, can't learned behavior be passed down through genes, like through DNA?
Ooh, through DNA, I don't know. I think through watching people, like, see that little head nod. I think
you think so?
I think it's definitely. No, I shouldn't say definitely. I would assume that it's something that, as a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old child watching my parents interact with their friends or their grandparents, that when somebody's actually listening to them and are tuning in, they're responding with like a gesture to symbolize like I'm listening to you or like I'm hearing you. And me as a child watching that and being like, oh, interesting, and like learning that and applying that because it's happening. That's how I would think it happens. I don't know. I couldn't imagine it being transferred genetically. But that's a very good question.
I mean, I don't know. I asked with ignorance because I have no clue. I have no idea.
That's true.
So,
also from what I can recall, kids go through a stage, I think between the ages 2 to 4, where they ask you questions about everything.
Yeah.
They want to know.
Why?
I still ask questions.
Why?
So it's like you tell them why and they keep asking you why after why after why, and you have to keep obviously giving them answers to it. So that's why, again, I feel like human nature comes in because they don't learn that from anywhere. It just naturally comes to them. And I feel like there's some people as well that want to know why. They want to go out of their way to actually find. And I'm not one of those, by the way.
I'm one of those.
And but truth be told, not all children do this though. And that's the thing that I'm saying. Like not all children are this way. Fair? You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's kind of like, I don't know. But right. I'm listening to what you were saying though, and I'm thinking, well, maybe that's how. Now it's like, now it'll go towards like a religious thing, but it's like, well, maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was like a bunch of people that, let's just say for sake of visualization, a bunch of people that look like people from India, and then there was a bunch of people that look like people from Africa, and then they somehow crossed paths, and then that was the first time that people was like, what you doing on my block? So what you doing up here? Break yourself. Like, yeah. And then boom, war. And now egos are evolving from this. And then now we talk about this learned behavior and the way that mommy and daddy are and the way that uncle is and all, and how they're being. And it's, oh, you can't mess with those ones that look like that. Oh, you can't mess with the ones. And like, is that like, was that the start of, so it's like this humanity thing where I don't know where the knowledge stops. Like, I don't know how far it goes back to where it's actual knowledge, where we're not talking about somebody saying, we found a 9-foot penis in the sands of Africa. It's like, wait, what? What are we talking about? I don't know. Wait, what? Are you sure that's not a cement truck hose? Like, what are we doing? So, I don't know, man. The beginning of where she's like, where was that
I missed that
Where
one.
was that?
I missed it.
So prejudice and preference, right? How do we get past it?
Education.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we could eradicate a huge percentage of that confusion between both by educating people. But how effectively are we willing to spread this education? Because again, education is subjective, and some cultures don't accept Western education. And
true, yeah.
Yeah, so again, it is a very, very big topic. But education is the key to eradicating that confusion between prejudice and preference. Again, it could be done, but at the same time, it requires a lot of time and resources to get it done. And it depends on how much people want to impact.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the initiative that goes behind it. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Education's huge. And I think representation as well, because you can educate people, but seeing tangible examples on a consistent basis of this education or like what this looks like can really shape people along with the education. So like I was saying earlier before, seeing you with dreads, a beard, as a teacher, as a man who's well put together, doesn't anger quickly, that representation of you now being a teacher, able to educate children, changes young children's view of what a Black man could be, right? Yeah. So yes, they see, movies, they see all these things, but they have a real life, tangible, in front of them person who's willing to help and listen and be there for them. And that is what changes their perception along with the education,
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say experience, but then when you say education, I'm like, well, I guess that's a part of it. And then and out here, what you said, I'm like, well, yeah, that's experiences as well. So it's the same thing. Well, I take back my answer. I'll keep it for another show. That's it. But listen, he is Mr. Victor O. She is Sarah G. I am Omega, and this is Diverse Clarity. This is where we have those thought-provoking conversations about things that matter and some that don't. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next episode.